Hey, my name's Jack. I'm the founder and former editor-in-chief of Crack.com and the host of the new How Stuff Works comedic news and pop culture podcast, The Daily Zeitgeist. Our goal is to tell you about the ideas that are out there changing the world. We talk politics and news, but we also cover supermarket tabloids, which might seem stupid, but millions of people pass those every day, and they absorb the ideas on the cover whether they want to or not. We also take movies pretty seriously because when we picture something that we haven't experienced, you generally use movies. You probably picture Terminator 2 when picturing a nuclear explosion, even though that's not actually what they'd look like. Anyways, we're trying to take the temperature of what's affecting the national shared consciousness, which sounds a little more hippie-ish than we actually are. But fair warning, guys, some of the content can get a little edgy, so not for young ears, but trust us, it's all in good fun. So go to Apple Podcasts and listen and subscribe to The Daily Zeitgeist. It's very good, is our catchphrase. We're kind of workshopping it.
I've got to do Around the Horn today, so.
Man, all these big deals. I got like a Sports Center hit last night. I think they aired it.
There you go. on hard.
Oh, hey. Just Little Rockets hit. And I was on 10 Cent. Not that I want to brag.
Right. You probably got seen by 5 million people then.
That's right. I'm big in China.
Hello and welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. It's Friday. We talk about the NBA. Joining us in New England. I'm just going to call you in New England because you are of New England.
Okay.
Jackie Mack.
Mm-hmm. Westford, Mass today. Winds, high winds, cool. We're expecting frost overnight. I took all my apples off my trees. I picked the very last of my carrots. Winter is coming.
Wow.
That's a productive morning.
Yes, it is.
Jackie and I are both under the weather. We've both been sick for over a week, and I'm tired of it.
Me too, because I keep thinking I'm going to be better, and I go to the gym and I work out, and then I come home and I'm like a wrung-out dish rag with a sore throat. So no more working out.
I'm on antibiotics. I'm on like some high-powered cough syrup. I went to the urgent care in L.A. at 5 in the morning the other day, and they gave me this high-powered cough syrup, and then I did the jump, and I was like half high on that cough syrup.
I believe the kids call it scissor.
Right. So here's the thing, Brian. We New Englanders, we're hardy folk. No medicine for us, man. We just wait it out. That's what New Englanders. We're pilgrims. We're pilgrims.
Is it is it maple syrup? Oh, there you go. Is it maple syrup season in New England right now?
It's a little late. It's getting late.
Oh, okay. And joining us from Houston, Texas. I mean, he's not at home in Dallas, but he's still in the heart of Texas. It's the one, the only, Van McMahon.
He's Van McMahon. He's the fattest dude in all the land. You got Texas blood as thick as mud. He's Van McMahon.
Howdy, folks.
And out in Los Angeles, it's early in the morning, but he's up with us. Andrew Hahn, spinning the dials. Andrew saw me this week. I was not in good condition.
I was very concerned. I was. There may be 3 or 4 people that I had to tell I don't need their assistance this morning because I wasn't sure if Brian was going to make it.
Yeah, well, I just. My wife told me just stay there, don't fly back. But I was like, no, I gotta get back.
This is like when LeBron just rolled his ankle so badly last night and was down for a little bit and then got up and walked it off and came back in the game after the timeout. That's the kind of toughness that Wendy's showing here.
Did you see the replay on that ankle?
It wasn't pretty. I mean, it looked ugly.
I thought. I mean, in the pantheon of LeBron ankle turns, that was pretty up there because he got almost 90-degree turn.
Yeah, no, it looked like something that could be a couple, 2 to 4 week type of injury, but he got up, kind of walked over to the bench and
As someone whose ankles are shot from years and years of bad basketball as opposed to brilliant basketball that LeBron has played, after a certain point, they just turn. And sometimes they don't even, believe it or not, they don't even hurt as much. It looks worse than it is sometimes. No lie. Because all the ligaments are gone. They're stretched so much that
I was stunned. He was, even under LeBron standards, I was stunned he was able to stay in the game with that one, because that was the same ankle that he injured in the preseason and basically missed 3 weeks. So I don't know about, they're playing in Dallas on Saturday. Now, LeBron has had a history of turning his ankle, finishing the game, and then missing the next game. But he said last night that, he thought he'd be able to play. We'll see. But that was, the Cavs lost that game. McMahon, you were there. But I actually thought it was one of the better performances the Cavs have had this season.
Yeah, I mean, they're a defensive disaster. That's not breaking news. Actually, I was just looking. They're the worst defense in the league by 3.5 points per 100 possessions.
So
which
bad.
is, I mean, that's massive. But, Jeff Green looked like he was a superstar. Like, where did that come from?
Don't get used to it.
Yeah,
true.
no.
We've seen that before.
There'll be the occasional flashes. And look, like Harden, I mean, they were playing. There was one possession. I felt sorry for poor Jeff Green because Harden tries to drive on him twice. I mean, he's moving his feet. He's playing great defense towards 2 drives, and then Harden just hits this crazy step back 3 with his hand all in his face. It's like, what are you going to do?
I know. I believe you wrote about that today. I read your story.
But you know what, Tim? I got to tell you. So I'm watching that game last night, and I know Chris Paul's coming back in a week, right? About a week. But I'm watching the end of that game, and I'm like, man, this is so familiar.
Oh, no. Hey, no question about it. And
1 for 8. That air ball at the end of the game. I mean, Clint Capella saved his bacon, baby. So did Tucker, by the way.
Oh, yeah, Tucker was great. Tucker was great.
Awesome.
And look, they've got, like, great role players around him. And he had to play 43 minutes last night because Mbamute was also out, so they basically were down to a 7-man rotation. But, no, if this was the whole season, then you could expect Harden to fade badly in the playoffs just like he did last year. But it won't be, assuming CP3 can stay healthy. But, yeah, last night was, spectacularly brilliant until the fourth quarter when he was just completely out of gas. He did make the one great hustle play and then the lob to Capella, but every shot was short. I mean, his last shot was 2 feet short, and, Capella comes in there and cleans it up. But, yeah, I mean, that's asking that much of Harden is a formula for a second-round exit. They've been there. They've done that. And, they hope CP3 is back in a week or so and can kind of lighten the load because, obviously, you probably don't get to the Warriors, much less challenge them if you ask that much of Harden on a, 82-game basis.
It is great to see Tucker, though, because, Tucker had a hand in that play that you were just talking about, too, that loose ball. He kind of got his nose in there. And those are the kind of players that I thought Houston was missing last year. And Baamute is another one. Yeah. And I do think it's going to tip the scales for them. I do. Those kind of plays, they resonate for days afterwards.
They got 3 of them now with Ariza. Ariza, but they need and they lost Beverly, but CP3's he's that same kind of just constant, intense, mean, up in your face defensive type of guy.
Right.
And speaking from the Cavs perspective, I actually thought it was a step forward for them. It's easy to forget that they're without Tristan Thompson right now. And this is a guy who's never missed this many games in his career. And they're already thin on the front line, just the way their team is built. But they don't have Tristan, and they gave up, I think, 9 offensive rebounds just in the fourth quarter last night. And Kevin Love fouled out with 2 minutes to go. So if either Love or Tristan are in that game, I think the Cavs probably win it. But they didn't have him, but they've got Isaiah Thomas and Tristan Thompson sitting on the bench. Okay, they're 5-7. Their defense is terrible. I'm not going to defend that. But the Cavs have actually played over the last week. This has been their best week of the season. And so I do see some signs that they're showing more effort, that they're getting better, even though they lost that game. They only gave up 17 points in the fourth quarter to the Rockets. Now, obviously, as you mentioned, Harden was tired, but for them to throw down a 17-point quarter, despite all those offensive rebounding issues, there were some steps in the right direction last night. So I think even though the Cavs took the loss, it was positive for them.
But still, Brian, I look at them and I look at J.R. Smith and I'm like, is it over, man? Is it, because it can't be. They need him. And, LeBron's connection to him is enduring. For whatever reason, Korver's never quite fit in there, in my opinion. That's my opinion. And I want them to trust Love because he's played well. But they still don't seem to. So I still have some questions. questions.
Yeah, I mean, there's still major issues there, but I will say, like, JR just played his 2 best games of the year back to back. So
right, he did. So can he do it? Can he continue it? I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know. It's because
you see when he plays well, you say, oh yeah, this is the Cavs. But when he's visible like he has been for so long now, you say, all right, maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, like, on one hand, you look at them, as McMahon said, their defense is
Atrocious.
Absolutely, it's an insult. But they're 4-0 against the Celtics, Wizards, and Bucks, and those are all. I mean, maybe the Pistons are going to be the class, where they are in the standings right now. Maybe that's a team that becomes an issue. But I can also look at them and see why they're not, feeling like they have no chance. I mean, they have, when they've wanted to, played well against these other teams, these top teams in the East. So,
all right, but I would take issue. I would take issue with the Boston Celtics win because no team on earth can recover from what they saw happen to Gordon Hayward in the first 5 seconds of their season and come back and win that game. And by the way, they almost did. So,
True, and they get to play twice more, and the Celtics will get their chance. But I'm just, that's the thing about the Cavs is when they actually have battened down and focused, they have looked more like the team that we expect them to do. So it's hard. Like, you look at their numbers and you say, my God, this is a disaster. They may be the 5 seed. They may be the 6 seed.
Yeah, I don't believe that. We don't believe that, though. Do we really?
No, but
so let me ask you this question, if I can. I'll play your role for a second. So Kyrie Irving is just, he looks like, you and I talked beforehand about this, before the podcast, about talk about calling your shots and calling them right. He's living high here in Boston. He's leading the league in steals. We can still argue about his pick and roll defense because that's still there's some improvement to be had there. But he's proven people wrong that say he can't or won't play defense. Clearly, the Celtics have thrived even though they're missing Gordon Hayward, and it seems to me he's left a gaping hole that maybe Isaiah Thomas can fill, maybe not. So I guess I would ask you, Brian, the difference between an IT team run Cavs team and a Kyrie Irving run Cavs team.
Well, Kyrie was so remarkable in isolation offense, and that was the way the Cavs played. And as bad as Kyrie has been on defense historically, one of the things that has become apparent this year is that Kyrie's offense helped the Cavs defense because the Cavs are so terrible in transition.
Right.
That if you're scoring more and your guard is able to score without having to drive all the way to the basket and fall under the rim like Derrick Rose has to score, or even Dwayne Wade, and he can score from the floor, it is better for your floor balance. And if he's a higher percentage scorer like Kyrie is versus Derrick Rose, then it gives you a chance to actually go back and set your defense. I mean, it's a pretty obvious thing in basketball, but it's meaningful that when you score, the other team's got to take the ball out, and you're allowed to run back and get set. And that's been an issue for the Cavs. So one of the things is, as bad as Isaiah is on defense, at least because he scores, he'll help the Cavs get back a little bit. But one of the things about the Celtics that I think has been remarkable, Avery Bradley is tremendous on-ball defense. One of the best on-ball defenders in the league. But when you talk to scouts, they will tell you that from a team defensive perspective, he doesn't live up to his reputation.
Never has. Never has.
So without Isaiah and Bradley, and with a more athletic
and Crowder,
and without Crowder. But I'm talking, yeah, you're right without Crowder. But with Tatum and Brown, and Kyrie,
Marcus Smart,
working hard. I mean, that perimeter of the Celtics defense, the way they move and the way they play team defense, is just better. It's better.
And Kyrie is actually really trying hard defensively. You mentioned the steals. He ranks third in the league in deflections. And, I mentioned that the Cavs, 3.5 points worse than the second worst defense in the league. The Celtics are 2 points better than the second best defense. I mean, there's like these huge gaps both ways. The Celtics are an absolutely dominant defensive team, and I'm not saying Kyrie's Pat Beverly all of a sudden, and we understand, but he's at least been not a liability and surrounded by great defenders, and he cares. I mean, that dude's on an absolute mission. I will say this, though, as far as the Cavs go, like analyzing them in the regular season almost feels like a waste of time because they were sub 500 after the All-Star break to the end of the regular season last year. They looked so bad in March and April. Then the playoffs started, and nobody could touch them in the East. So it's almost feels like, okay, we're going to panic, and we do this for 82 games.
Here's the big question, though, about the Cavs that I have, too, because Ty Lue seems to me to be under a little bit of pressure here. I think that's accurate to say. And Kyrie has gone out of his way since he got to Boston to make a lot of comments about how great Brad Stevens is. And by the way, Brad Stevens is terrific. And that's why I maintained all along that when Kyrie came to Boston, you were going to see a different defensive player because of the way they play defense and what they require you to do and the help defense that they play and the depth they have defensively. See, you mentioned Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown has been the difference maker. He's been the X factor on the defensive end. And Jason Tatum's just going to be a star. But you also have Marcus Smart, Terry Rozier. These are guys who are also great and committed defenders. And when everybody's committed, Ojale, right? He's something else.
I was going to let you pronounce that last name.
Ojale, yep. So you have a certain style that you play, and defense is stressed always first. So if you don't buy into that, then you become everything everybody said you were, which was a selfish, me first, doesn't even care about winning guy. And Kyrie can't afford to be that and doesn't want to be that.
I'd also say that Al Horford, my guy, has been rebounding again.
Yep.
Last year he averaged like 6 rebounds, and I think he's up. I haven't looked at his numbers update. I think he's up near 9. He's playing great 2-man game with Kyrie. He's defending the rim and he's rebounding. I mean, that's one thing that we thought with the Celtics, especially after they lost, Olenek and Tyler Zeller and
none of whom could rebound, Brian.
I know, but they lost size. So you're thinking, my gosh. Well, now Horford's rebounding better. Their perimeter players are all rebounding. And Aaron Baines has been a nice addition.
Well, he has been. He's been a big, tough, bruising guy. That's what they've been missing, an intimidator. And the other thing is, Terry Rozier has always been a great rebounding guard. Smart has always been a great rebounding guard. And so I wasn't worried about rebounding. Maybe I was the only one on this earth. And Al, I'll say this about Al. I said it when he came. I'll say it again. If you look at Al strictly in terms of numbers, you will never understand the full picture. He is so much more about nuance than he is hard statistics. Somebody, because we live in a world of analytics, is keeping track of all the pick and rolls and the extra passes that he makes, okay? So he gets, 5 assists a game or something, maybe more. But the truth is
4.7.
There we go. Okay. But he usually facilitates so much more than that. He's making the pass before the pass, the hockey assist, if you will. All the little subtle things that Al does defensively. When your man gets by you and he hedges and then gets back to his guy, those things don't show up in traditional statistics. So I had this argument with Celtics fans all last year, and they're like, well, we like Al Horford, but he hasn't really given us the numbers we thought. I'm like, he never will. And if that's what you're looking at all the wrong things.
Yeah, plus his screening. I mean, if you read Zach Lowe this morning, his 10 things to like. Number 2 is talking about the Kyrie Horford stuff, and he shows the play where it's Kyrie's off the ball and Horford's screening for him. They kind of just make this adjustment mid-play. I mean, he's just so smart. Horford is. That, like you said, there, he 15, 9, and 5, but then he does so many other things that help his teammates. And there's a reason he's got the best plus minus on the team.
You bet. He's really, and he's. Someone told me from Atlanta. They said we were sorry to lose him because of his abilities, but he was the single most positive influence in their locker room. Single most positive influence in their locker room. Guys really like him.
Then they brought in Dwight to replace him.
Yeah, I know, right?
Just to clue in our listeners here, I want to point out that in our Eastern Conference season preview, for the umpteenth time, Mr. Windhorst wanted to point out that Al Horford did not deserve his contract. He's a very fun player, and that's why he said Al Horford is his guy just now.
Yeah,
that was. You're not paying a guy a max contract for intangibles.
Ooh, Brian, he looks real good.
Sure you are. Sure
You're
you are.
paying a guy a max contract to give you a chance to win a championship.
If it's the kind of intangibles that help you win it all, that's exactly what you're going to do, because you have to look past all the obvious statistics, which Brad Stevens does every single day.
Well, it's moot. It's a moot conversation now. He's on the team, and they're building around him, and he is a really good player to play alongside Kyrie, because when you have Kyrie, if you have a skilled big man that he can play pick and roll with, it's just ideal for him. So, when they signed Al Horford, they didn't know they were going to have Kyrie. They had Isaiah. But
they were never going to keep Isaiah. I
know, but they didn't know they were having Kyrie. But it's all moot now. They have him, and they're building around him, and his contract is not relevant. It is what it is. Discussing his contract doesn't matter now. He is.
Boy, that's a slick way to get yourself out of this.
I'm telling you, this is the longest winded I was wrong I've ever heard.
Jackie, I wanted to talk to you about another sort of Boston-related thing. Did you see this interview with Ray Allen with Sports Illustrated?
I have not seen it yet, but nothing would surprise me.
so Ray has a book coming out.
Yes, I know about the book. I actually talked with Ray about writing that book at one point.
Okay, well, I don't know what you can say and what you can't, but
I decided not to do it. So, and we decided we weren't what I wanted, how I envisioned what I thought the book should be, and how Ray envisioned it were two different things.
Ooh, this sounds like talking with Jackie McMullen right now.
No. I love Ray Allen. I love Ray. I've known him forever. But I had an idea for a book, and he had his own book. And by the way, he hit one of the greatest shots of all time. He should do the book the way he wants to do it, and so he did. Good for him.
Well, he said in the book, he said in this interview that this book will discuss his feelings towards the Celtics. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know what the book says, because I was getting the impression that they were sort of closing. Pierce over the summer had the conversation with them, and he sort of called for them to mend fences and. Mm-hmm. Because they just went through the 10th anniversary of the title, and they didn't really have a formal celebration that would have involved Ray. But at some point, those guys are going to be honored, and it would be nice if when Pierce gets his number retired, and when Garnett gets his number retired, that Ray came.
Would it be nice with KG? Like I can't see that one.
Well, yeah. So here's the thing, right? So I talked to Paul when Paul was with the Washington Wizards. I went down there springtime, right before the playoffs, and had to sit down with Paul. And I asked him about a million things, but one of them was Ray. And he said to me, look, I don't know why everybody's making a big deal about this. We weren't that friendly with Ray. We were a little ticked when he took off and left. But by the way, I don't blame Ray for that. They were trying to trade Ray Allen before that. He was a free agent. He had every right to do whatever he wanted to do. So I can understand why Paul and those guys were a little miffed. But they got over that pretty quickly. The fact of the matter is they were never tight with this guy. And part of the reason they were never tight with him, as Paul tells it, was when, for instance, they'd have a charity event. And whenever somebody, it's like an unwritten rule, right? When one of your teammates has a charity event, you show up. So they would always show up to everything Ray was doing, and Ray does a lot of charity things. But whenever they had something, Ray would never show up. And so those little things. The other thing was Ray, when they were on the road, was playing golf half the time with Danny and Duck. So they considered him a little closer to management than to the players. Ray's a very interesting, different, singular guy. And he did not mesh with them socially. Paul Pierce said to me, the real big three was me, Sam Cassell, and Kevin Garnett. Okay? Now, KG can put all this. He's dead to me because he didn't stay with us. And KG's a little crazy enough to think that way. But there were also many other things going on behind the scenes, including a huge rift between Ray Allen and Rondo. Now, Rondo started out wanting to emulate Ray Allen. As the time went on, he decided he'd emulate KG instead. Not the best career move, I don't think, that he ever made, frankly. But he and Ray had a falling out that involves things both on the court and off the court. And that also caused. So there's lots of reasons why. But the fact remains, how many of these great teams, I mean, the big three at the end, the original big three in Boston, McHale and Bird were barely speaking to each other by the end. There was all sorts of stuff going on with those two. But now, many years later, they see each other. Hey, how you doing? They could, at an 86 reunion, they're going to hug each other and have a beer and say, how's your family?
Well, we'll see whether this book makes that possible or not, because we'll see what he says. But the other thing in this interview, he took some shots at the Miami Heat and said that the last year in Miami, it's so interesting that there's so much being discussed now about the last year in Miami right. Because Wade talked about it last week. He called that last year like a bad right. marriage.
Yeah.
Let me just say, as somebody who covered that team, I sensed just fatigue, both mental and physical fatigue, because everything that it was to be with the Heat, the Heatles, and
right.
The style at which they played. As a quick reminder, they blitzed or trapped all the pick and rolls
all the time. Yeah.
So they just played a very, very high energy level of defense, and their players just got tired of it. And it worked. My God, when they would get into the stretches of games where they would force those turnovers and they would get into the open court. But Ray, he basically said that they mismanaged their team, that they wore them out, that there was too many practices and too many shoot-arounds, and that they wore them out by the end. And I was fascinated by that because, Jackie, and you can attest to this, Ray was constantly coming in for extra work. Ray, whether they had practice or not, Ray was there early and he was staying late, and he was even if they had a quote unquote light practice, Ray would be out there, with his shirt off, doing his routine, going around the perimeter and doing all kinds of crazy calisthenics and everything. And I was just really surprised that of all people that thought they practiced too much, that it would be workaholic Ray Allen saying that.
Right. But see, Ray's OCD, and so he has certain things that he has to do at a certain time every day, no matter what, including having chicken and rice the day of the game, shaving his head at the exact same time, putting up the exact same amount of shots. And, of course, you can imagine for any NBA coach to work around someone that's that precise and has these kind of maniacal routines, how hard it's going to be because, you get in late, you say, you know what, we're not going to shoot around at 10 like we normally do. We're going to do it an hour later. What? What do you mean? And this is what happened when Ray was in Boston. Doc decided, you know what, I think we're going to do our shoot-arounds right before the game instead of, in the mornings. And Ray's like, no, because I need to be out there. I need that time to myself. And, so Ray was not an easy guy to play with for coaches or for players. And now that doesn't mean he wasn't a valuable teammate, because clearly he was. He's one of the greatest shooters of all time. We can argue that shot he made against the Spurs in the finals is one of the most historic shots in NBA history, or certainly in recent NBA history. So you can value his ability, his accomplishments, his attention to detail, but he's persnickety. I don't know how else to say it.
Ooh, that's a good word, persnickety.
Yeah. That's what he is. So none of this surprises me. Ray, I don't know who Ray's close friends were. I don't know.
So they asked Eric Spoelstra about this, and Spo had a really fascinating answer. Spo, but do you know how old Spo is, by the way?
41.
You want to take a guess, McMahon?
I think he's 49, isn't he?
He's 47. He looks like he's about 37.
Yeah, he's so young looking.
I was closer than you, Jackie.
Yeah, you win, but you went over, so you do not the range.
We can debate that.
Price's Right rules.
Yeah.
He had a tremendous answer to Ray's comments. He goes, "I'll always respect Ray Allen. I walk past the photo in the Heat. There's a long hallway between the Heat locker room and the court, and they call it Championship Alley, and they have all these wall-sized photos of their championship moments. It's actually really, really cool. And he says he goes by and taps the photo all the time, and I believe that. And he says, I respect everything about Ray Allen. And then he said something I think was hilarious, just so psychologically hilarious. He's like, we really support Ray's restaurant. We order lunch from it once a week. I guess Ray has a restaurant in Miami.
Yeah, like a fresh food, like a organic place, right?
Which was like his way of saying, "Hey, man, we're helping you. We're trying to give you business, and you're taking shots at us. What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah, I love Spo. He's the best, man. He's great.
But I'm really surprised because I didn't think there was a whole lot of venom about that last Heat season. The Spurs beat them 4-1. They were clearly the better team. The Heat rallied on him and took 6 and 7 the year before, got that great victory. They had the 27 game winning streak that year. They got 4 finals runs and 2 titles. And by the end, they were done. I really didn't think that there was too much hand-wringing over the last season, but apparently I'm wrong because both Wade and Allen have come out and voiced their opinion on it, and LeBron left, so that was his opinion on it.
There you go. LeBron's a smart guy, though. He saw that window shut, and he didn't want him to be shut on his fingers. That's all.
Was that Heat era a disappointment? When those three got together, well, I don't know. When those three got look, if the Warriors don't win another championship, I think that's a disappointing era because the potential's there to reel off a bunch of them. To me, 2 titles. LeBron's the one, not 2, not 3. I mean, we all remember that. I don't know. 2 titles for that kind of talent coming together. I think that's a disappointment.
By year like 2.5, you could tell that wasn't going to be held together for very long. You could just tell. I mean, I remember talking about it a little bit and saying I thought LeBron was going to leave and just getting absolutely skewered in Miami for it. But if you were around the team, you could tell that these guys weren't bonding in the same way that maybe they had at the start. And the other thing was, and this is happening to the Cavs right now, without question, the things that the organization had to do to keep the team stocked, just they completely gassed their ability to, there was no draft picks, there was no young players, there was no place to get the injection of new energy.
Same thing that the Mavericks did, and to get their one championship, and then
But
when you have no young talent, it's tough to kind of keep something going.
But you know whose fault that is, Brian? That's LeBron's fault, because when they originally agreed, all the way back, Pat Riley told me this. When they originally agreed to do those deals, they're bringing those guys in, they agreed to the 4-year deal. And then they couldn't announce it till, you know how that works. You agree in principle, right? Then you have to wait that time period. And then all of a sudden the agents come back to them and said, no, we're going to do the 5-year. And he's like, but if I do that, I got to renounce all these players. And so those players had a chance to keep that thing going forever with the infusion of young talent, and they put the Heat's feet to the fire and took the extra year and took the extra money and put them in an impossible position. So if they were not able to sustain it, they only have themselves to blame.
Well, this blade cuts both ways. That is true that instead of just signing outright that Wade or that LeBron and Bosh forced the sign and trade, which caused the Heat to have to trade away draft picks. But I will also tell you that the Heat made several moves over the course of those 4 years to ease salary concerns. when they traded draft picks to get off of salary. Now, they were paying the tax, so it's not like they were not, having some sacrifice. But when they were trading away like Mario Chalmers and things like that, to get off salary, that caused some issues.
By the way, you guys occasionally remind me of the Oklahoma City Thunder crunch time offense, because it's like we've got these superstars who are figuring out how to play together, and it's too deferential. Just jump in there and make plays. And by the way, can we talk about what a disaster OKC is right now?
No kidding, huh?
They are the worst crunch time team in the league by far. They're minus 49. The next worst team is minus 17. Last year, they were the second best crunch time team in the league, and that's because everybody knew exactly what it was. It was get Russ the rock, and you know what? Play defense, get him the rock, and if he misses, rebound.
That's it.
Set picks for him and rebound, or just get the hell out of his way. And now it's like, Russ, I gotta try to get Melo his touches, and then, it's Melo's turn now. Well, boy, Paul George took one shot in the fourth quarter last night, and it's just they're so out of whack. And it's, the whole complaint about Russ and KD and, why that thing, why they ultimately weren't able to win together was crunch time became your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn. And they are right back to that, and it's ugly. And, look, Denver's a good team and tough place to play, blah, blah, blah. But, man, they lost in freaking Sacramento. Good heavens.
Tim, has there been a team in like recent memory that brings a bunch of stars together and they figure it out quickly? Like, is it those Celtics teams, the KG teams, the last ones that did that?
And Jack, you'd be better to answer that one. Obviously,
they did it pretty quickly. They did it pretty quickly.
Yeah, but that team did it with killer defense.
Yeah, and KG wasn't a go-to guy at that point. He was like a superstar defender, role player type of guy. Obviously, the Heat got off to a slow, funky start. I remember when they were 9-8, and LeBron's bumping Spo in Dallas and all that kind of stuff. But I mean,
remember the Cavs? The Cavs 2014 started 19-20.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised at all that they're struggling. They've had some close losses that could have gone either way. Wiggins banks that shot in at from half court or whatever. Then they also have the game where Carmelo gets ejected.
Mm-hmm.
If Carmelo stays in that game, maybe they win it. I mean, I'm not so much concerned about the record. I actually think they've been sharing the ball, okay. I think the issue becomes with what happened in Miami. It took Wade basically to come to LeBron to say, hey, you have to have the keys. You got to drive the bus. Now, it didn't happen until their second year together. This team doesn't have that kind of time because, Melo and George can be free agents,
mm-hmm.
but they're going through the cycle right now. They have to try to work it. They have to try to work it out, and it's going to be a bit of a cycle. So I'm not surprised at all, and I'm also not overreacting to it. And the one thing that they have on their side in terms of coming together, nobody's expecting this team to win the championship. At least I'm not.
Paul Pierce said they were going to win.
Well, I don't know.
That was his crazy. That was his crazy prediction. We do the crazy predictions. That was his. But he was very bullish on them. I think the problem is, though, like, so the way Tim described it last year, how they won basketball games, they win basketball games because Russell Westbrook is just a machine, and he's on one speed all the time, overdrive, and he's just so frenetic and so successfully frenetic when he's like that. And there's just, would you ever use the word frenetic to describe Carmelo Anthony ever in your lifetime? I don't want to pick on Carmelo, although he is, I said this on Around the Horn the other day, he is kind of like the cooler, right? Everywhere he goes, things go bad. Everybody's full houses start becoming 110 and 19 in their hand. You got to fold. And so, but I do think it's about pace. Like, what is Oklahoma City's identity? They play defense. They're still playing pretty good defense. But what is their identity on the offensive end of the floor? And I don't know if that ever gets solved over the course of a year. I don't know.
And like Wendy said, if it doesn't get solved over the course of a year, then it'll get solved this summer because the identity will be, it's Russ and, a bunch of role players again.
Well, but how does that dynamic, how is it different than the team that you've been watching, Tim, in Houston? Like, Chris hasn't been playing, so it hasn't reared its head.
Right. Well, that's the thing. They're about to go through it. And, look, hey, Chris Paul's the one who's got to make the adjustment. James is, there'll be possessions where he's off the ball, but this is his team. I mean, Chris Paul has to learn how to play off the ball when he's on the floor with James Harden because James is still going to have the ball in his hand. I mean, he's playing better than he ever has. He's in his prime. And so, like I said, the adjustment's all for CP3. It's not really going to be for James. But, yeah, they're going to, they're 9-3 right now. Paul will be back in, week, 10 days, whatever it is. And their first 12 games, I seriously doubt they'll be 9-3 in those games.
Although, don't you think, I think Chris Paul has the skill set to play off the ball. Excellent mid-range shooter, can run pick and roll with anybody, with the ball, without the ball. I mean, he's got the skills to do it. It's just his instinct is to want the ball and to command the ball. But I still believe it's going to work. I know maybe and as we've discussed before, because of the way D'Antoni broke down those minutes, now they may be altered a bit because they're going to want to ease Paul back in. It's just hilarious that they're really not even on the floor as much as we think they would be anyway. That's the crazy part about the whole thing.
No, but they will be on the floor together during crunch time.
Of course. They better be. So, that's the whole idea.
Right. Yep. And look, I think it'll work. I do think, though, there will be some moments. There will be some kinks to work out. But, look, I mean, the Rockets are going to be great offensively. They'll have to figure out that dynamic, but they'll rank in the top 2 or 3 in the league at the end of the year offensively. The question is, can they get enough stops? D'Antoni was pretty proud that they were in the top 10 in defensive efficiency. They took a little hit last night. They're back down to 12. But CP3 does help that. I mean, he's a first-team all-defender. I don't know if he's as good as Pat Beverly, but they're 2 all-defensive team guards, and he's one of them.
I mean, just in terms of optics, I sort of feel like I would prefer Oklahoma City situation over Houston right now, where the stars aren't. They need to. It's very clear that they need to figure out how they're going to make this work, and they have to take accountability for it. Whereas in Houston, Chris goes down with injury and he's out for a little bit, and Houston clearly looks good, and then they have to work him back in. And if they struggle after looking good early on, then there might be some grousing or griping going on in terms of trying to get back on track. I don't know. From an optic standpoint, it seems like it.
I disagree with that. I disagree with that. I really do, Andrew, because Chris Paul has to make this work. He's got to make it work.
Yeah.
He forced his trade. He said, I can do this. I can be this guy. All those things the Clippers said about me, I'm going to prove to them all wrong. Kind of like Kyrie. What everybody said about me in Cleveland, wait till you see how I'm going to be in Boston. So
and
Chris
don't
Paul,
think that CP3 is not – if he doesn't see the Clips himself as far as everything the Clippers are saying, there's folks in that Rockets organization who make sure he sees every quote that could be perceived as a shot at him. And he's so determined – if you talk to him, he's like, I was ball dominant because I had to be. The rosters required me to be. Now, you can argue, well, Blake Griffin's a pretty damn good playmaker, da-da-da. But that's how he feels, and he's so determined to prove, look, I can play this the other way. I am choosing this. And, as far as, like, great start and maybe it'll be some rough stretches, well, James Harden can't prove a damn thing until May. He knows that. And he knows that if this thing with CP3 doesn't work, then he's a second round and gone guy. So this whole thing is about May for the Rockets. I mean, November's nice, and he's been spectacular. But he was an MVP runner-up last year. Nobody questions whether he can be a great regular season player. It's can he actually finish the season strong? And he needs Chris Paul to give him a chance to do that, because they can't keep this kind of load on him and think he's going to be strong in the second round of playoffs.
And I would say that for the Thunder also, November has only limited value.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Because I just watching them, like if you look at their stats, like their three guys' stats, they're all like taking about the same amount of shots. They're all averaging about the same amount of points. They're all trying to play nice. That one, the night that that Wiggins hit that shot, the play that set it up. All three. They ran like a dribble handoff, decoy play, and like all three of them were involved, and Melo hits the big shot, and it was beautiful.
And that had a chance to be such a great little moment for OKC, because Russ dominated crunch time, but then the go-ahead shot is him creating a three for Melo and knocking it down, and then Wiggins goes and knocks down a 35-foot
right. But
shot.
I think what I'm reading out of that, though, is that they really are invested in each other's success, and at some point, that could actually mean one of them saying, "Hey, you need to take more shots. Don't worry about like people are obsessing about last night, for example, that Paul George only got one shot in the fourth quarter. Well, I didn't see the game, but if it works out that
old man Wendy was in bed,
yeah,
I was sick. I was on high level cough medicine, but if it works out that's the best for the team, that's the way they're going to have to go. So I think what's most important to me is that they are invested in each other's success, and that they will work together to find something. I believe that they will.
Yeah, but so let's talk about that quickly. Invested in each other. So if you're Melo, another guy's got to prove, no, it's not me. It's not me every time I go somewhere we lose. It's not me. Mm-hmm. I can do this. I can be the dream team stretch player that everybody loved. And, so that's all good. But he's getting his 17 shots. So what if he gets down to 7 shots? So
he'll never get down to 7.
Okay, so but see, that's what they need, in my opinion. Melo needs to take about 7-8 shots a game tops. That's it. He's going to be a nice release valve for the other two guys. And unless you can convince him it's best for him and the team for him to do that, I don't like their chances.
I actually thought that Melo coming off the bench would have been great, just because, let him be that guy with the second unit, come in,
mm-hmm.
Get buckets. And my boy Eric Horn with the Oklahoman asked him about it in his first press conference in OKC, and Melo cracked up. Paul George was walking across the back room, and he was like, Yo, P, they say I got to come off the bench. And he just thought it was the funniest thing I ever heard, or I actually thought basketball-wise it made sense.
Yeah, but that's an ego. It's such an ego thing.
Yeah.
More than anything, starting is it still matters to these guys. It's really kind of funny. That's why it was kind of remarkable what went on in Memphis last year, right? That was pretty remarkable. Mm-hmm. It really was. So it's, that's just an ego thing that goes back to the beginning of time.
But as the record's ugly. They're 4-7, plus minus though. They're a top 10 team in the league. They're plus 4.5 per game. They've just been so crappy down the stretch of close game. I mean, like I said, they're almost triple as bad as any other team in the league in those situations when they were the second best in the league last year. And that's where it's the same thing. It's ego, but it's all. I feel like it's kind of a situation where, because they know ego could be an issue there, everybody's sort of deferential and nobody's just making plays. They're not just playing basketball. Right.
For now, let's just wait and see. Just wait and see.
All right.
When Tim was saying that CP is he's paying attention to everything that the Clippers are doing, and that he wants to prove that he's not ball dominant. That the metaphor I thought in my mind was like, Chris Paul is like, look how humble I am. I'm the most humble person around. I'll prove how humble. You see this humility going on?
No question.
Well, thank you for listening to the Hoop Collective. Hopefully by next week, Jackie and I will be back to 100% and we'll be more at each other's throats, like everybody likes it.
I'm going to interrupt you right now to say, the heck with you, Brian Windhorst.
Right,
You're not even that sick. Come on. Anti-pandy coughs here. Bring it. Come on. I've been out planting crops. Come on. Bring it.
You've been out picking apples and carrots. And
there you go. How was that, Tim? Was that better?
No, much better. Much better.
Good.
All right. Thanks for listening. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Adios.
Thanks, guys. KB and KP starts right now.
All right, welcome back to KBKP. What's up, Kaylee?
Hi. Nothing. What's up with you, Pelty?
Well, I don't know about you, but I've been thinking about how do we kind of learn when players have changed their games? Because that's one of the interesting questions at this point early in the season.
Yeah, that's a big question, KP. Who do you have in mind when you're thinking about this?
Well, one of the big ones who someone asked us about, I think, as part of the Tuesday question portion of this of our show is Andre Drummond. And all of a sudden being for a while an 80% free throw shooter, and then on Wednesday night an over 7 free throw shooter. So what is Andre Drummond now?
I don't know, but I think I've got a weird take on this. So
all right, I'm here for it.
Yeah, I'm ready. We complain so much about like players not being able to make shots, particularly free throws, because we see it's so easy and we get so angry at the players. But if we just think about it differently for a second, it gets at what's kind of so impressive about sports. So if you think about our lives, right, as this like linear kind of well, I guess it would be a curve. But for long periods of time in our lives, our bodies completely refuse to do what we command of them. So if you think about it, like as a baby, you can't even hold a bottle to drink milk yourself or lift a spoon to your mouth, and your legs can't hold you up, and your neck actually has trouble holding your own head up. But then a few years later, you master those things and you still struggle with other things, like you can't color inside the lines in coloring books or cut with scissors in a perfect circle. And it's hard to do things like tie your shoelaces. And then as we age, like down the other end of the line, there exist new failures of coordination, like not being able to stand again, and you have permanent aches and pains, and you use a wheelchair, and you need help doing the simple things yet again in your life. But then there's that little period of time in the middle years where we reach our prime in the mastery of our own physical bodies. And athletes do this to a stunning degree. That's why we think they're like superhumans, right? So why LeBron looks like a freak. So through these regulated challenges, like practices, games, and workouts, they train their bodies to follow their will almost entirely. And athletes basically embody this metaphysical struggle of the human spirit against the disobedient and entropic forces of its material cage. It's basically like the most impressive and sophisticated form of revenge. And that is what Drummond is kind of going through. It's a subjugation of the body to the will, and through something that his body has found particularly difficult, and that for him is free throws. So if we think about it like that, it's actually pretty impressive, like the struggle he's going through and the periods where he's doing really well, even if it is something as silly as free throws. Like, watch me shoot a free throw. Like, it's terrible. I can't do it. So maybe if we look at it as more than just free throw shooting and more than just getting angry at a player for not being able to put a ball in the hoop when it seems so easy and the pressure's on, we should maybe forgive him for the process to get there and kind of consider how impressive that is.
All right, there's a lot to unpack there, but first off, I want to note that I hope you said it was a short period of time where we have like physical mastery. Like, I hope there's a long period of time between when I'm a baby and, God willing, have to be helped out in my old age. But we'll see.
Not if I give you these hands. Not if I give you the hands.
I'm just worried about
Your
what age I'm
real
going to be when I
short, Calvin.
start running while jogging.
Jogging.
I'm sorry. When I start falling while jogging is what I meant.
Oh, God. No, you already run while you jog, don't you?
Well,
Little sprints in there, KP?
it's more jog while I run. I think part of what makes the Drummond situation so fascinating, and these other guys who are great players but poor foul shooters, is kind of the contrast between some parts of the game do seem to come so easily to them, which is its own thing, whether anything really comes easily. But then there's like this one aspect of the game that is so difficult for them. And I like you, I think, find that struggle relatable, particularly because of the fact that I am a horrendous foul shooter.
Oh, me too. I can't even play horse. I can play horse, but I actually am the horse.
Wait, what?
Like it is as if you are watching a horse shoot free throws.
There you go. The hooves are not well suited to that purpose.
Don't talk about my nails.
Yeah, I mean, to go to your broader point of like how players and then also humans as a whole evolve. I mean, it's interesting because you've got this contrast of two different things that, there is, as you mentioned, a curve of player development where players peak around age 27. They're building towards that beforehand generally, and then, falling from that after that age. But it's actually this product, I think, of two totally opposite trends, which is one that your skill and your ability to recognize patterns and read what's going to happen in the game, those are generally always improving. But your athleticism is pretty much always declining. Like if you actually look at pure measures of athleticism, I think the most interesting is our former colleague Tom Haberstroh and I looked at a little bit at like what's the aging curve on dunks, and players are basically always going down in terms of how much they dunk after they're in the NBA. Like the peak of that is probably somewhere to 18 to 21, and the reason 27 is the peak is because that's the point at which the downward trend of your athleticism intersects with the upward trend of your growth in terms of skills and knowledge.
Yeah, that's really interesting. How did you guys measure this?
I mean, it was just purely, I think, how many dunks per minute players had, something like that.
It's
what?
The first question is, how did you guys measure this? And then Pelton's like, oh, well, it's just kind of this thing that we arbitrarily picked.
We just kind of counted on our fingers. I don't know. Something matched up. The number said this, the other number said that, and then they intersected, and now I sound like a smart guy.
Well, I mean,
all right, would you like me to open the piece here? Yeah, okay. So here's let's see, was it dunks per minute? Let's see.
We're going to remain very quiet while KP looks this up.
Yeah, dunks per 36 minutes. And so it was the highest when players were age 20, because that was the first point at which we had enough players to have a real sample. It was basically the same 21, 22, and then immediately from there starts declining.
Interesting. So when I talk about the middle years, and you joked about you hope that's more than just a short period of time before I kill you, or at least you start deteriorating from being friends with me. For an athlete, that period of time is significantly smaller. If you're just speaking in terms of their career, not their actual existence.
Right.
So how do you get the most out of the peak years? And does every aspect of the game matter as much as what they're good at in those peak years? And why do we get so frustrated about their deficiencies if they're so high level in some other things? I mean, I understand why, but is it, when we look at it like that, is it that important?
well, relative to life in general, it probably isn't that important.
No,
but yeah, I mean, it's
life in general.
It is one of those interesting things where, like, NBA middle age is you turn 30, and human middle age is so hopefully much after that, and
it's also 30.
You know that you. Well, yeah, I guess it sort of is. But the decline phase is much longer in real life than it is in the NBA. But yeah, I mean, it is one of those weird things where, like, what's the expression that athletes die twice? First when they retire.
Mm-hmm. But then, so if we think about it like the mind over matter thing, or you're in complete control now of, or in your prime control at least, of your will over your body. it's weird to think about who is the most complete in that period of time. Like that's what Michael Jordan was, what LeBron. I don't mean, some people would say Kobe. I don't know, but who do you think, outside of like the obvious, who's taken the most advantage of that period of time, or who has had the most impressive?
I'm here. First off, I'm here for the Kobe shade. Well, LeBron is fascinating because should we get into this? Like the concept of the fact that he's still playing at this incredibly high level as far from his peak as he is. You know, he's right there, is arguably the most valuable. Like when you count playoffs, probably still the number one player in the league. Well, after I think the period of time where you would have considered that a realistic thing for him.
Right.
I would like to turn this back towards Drummond for a minute and kind of pose the question of what qualifies as permanent change. We're 12 games into a season and everyone is lauding him for vastly improved shooting consistency, even though he had a horrific night just a few nights ago. When do we sit here and say that the change in behavior or change in actions from someone is actually their new behavior as opposed to just a temporary blip?
Yeah, and this is a question people pose all the time because they're like, you know, how long does it take before the start of a season this is not a fluke anymore? And people always kind of want a specific answer, which is tough for a couple of reasons. Now, the first simple explanation is because, you know, it's different period of time for different things. You know, you're the kind of rebounding, assists, steals, blocks, those tend to normalize pretty quickly. The shooting stats, and particularly three-point percentage, those take an incredibly long time to stabilize. So not everything is operating at the same scale. But then the other part of it is, I mean, there is no one date where, like, yesterday this was a fluke and today it's real. Like, it's always kind of this sliding scale. And the way I like to think about it from more of a Bayesian perspective is, you know, you have an initial belief about a player's skill set, and that belief can be really strong or relatively weak, maybe for a rookie. But for someone like Drummond, there's this hugely strong belief that, okay, he's not a good free throw shooter. He's never been a good free throw shooter in his entire career. Mm-hmm. And so how much we change that belief depends both on, you know, how strong the new information is, which is a product of how many free throws he shot, and also how far his free throw percentage is from what we expected it to be beforehand. So even a relatively small stretch like the first, 11 games of the season can change our perception of Drummond's free throw shooting pretty dramatically if he's as far away from that initial belief that prior as he was. We sometimes think of players as if they are stat generating machines and, like they have a fixed, this is Andre Drummond's free throw percentage, which is kind of how you have to think about it if you're like an opposing coach deciding whether to hack him or something. But there's also this element where, like a free throw generating machine, the odds of it actually, that machine actually going 14 of 16 on one night and then 0 of 7 less than a week later are not that good. I mean, there are real differences in the underlying ability.
Do we think that once, like, let's say we're, 3/4 of the way through the season and Drummond does, in fact, prove to be better at free throw shooting, do we think that most fans, whether they're fans of his team or another team or whatever, that they become kind of upset because the player has not confirmed his own destiny as they see it? You know how you read King Lear, right? And no matter what, cover to cover, King Lear never goes any differently. So King Lear will never toast with his 3 daughters at the end of the book and everything will be happy and they'll have their little lap dogs in their lap and whatever. King Lear ends how King Lear ends. And we kind of apply that to our friendships and people in daily life where we think something of somebody, and if they deviate at all from what we think that they are, or we see them outside of their natural element and they behave differently, we're almost upset, even if it's a good thing, because they aren't conforming to what we think of them. So like, we would almost rather, we have a friend that we think is, of this average intelligence kind of guy, and then we find out he's built a rocket. Yeah, this is about Han. and like all of a sudden he says something smart, and it kind of like disturbs you a little bit because you're not like you're not used to it. But or someone that you don't find that funny, and then all of a sudden they give you like this like complete knee slapper. It's almost jarring. So do we think that people on the whole will be actually happy about Drummond being good at free throws if it continues that way, or shooting or whatever? Or do you think that it will upset people more because it's just not confirming what they think about him?
Are you saying, Kaylee, are you suggesting that people care more about being right than anything else?
Yes, that is what I'm suggesting.
Well, there's a lot of evidence in favor of that. I mean, I think the one thing that would happen with Drummond is people would probably say, well, if he was capable of shooting this well from the free throw line, why didn't he do it before? I think that's, the criticism that people would level.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Okay, but bigger question off your thought here. Have you ever read the book Mindset?
No.
By Carol Dweck, whose name Carol Dweck, actually, I should say, not Carol Dweck. So it lays out that a professor, by the way, at Stanford, KB, so you made me look her up. It lays out that there are two extreme versions of how people think about the world. One of them is growth mindset, which is where you believe that, skills are learned and we constantly have the ability to change. We constantly have the opportunity to change our abilities by learning more, by practicing more, by whatever it is. And then fixed mindset, which, holds that basically our ability is this innate quality that we are born with, and you're either good at something or you're not. Now, obviously, most people actually fall somewhere on this spectrum, not at one of those two extremes.
Right.
But, I think if you're someone who thinks of things in a very fixed mindset way, that probably that concept of someone being different than what you expected might be more troubling to you than if you're more of the growth mindset where you believe that people are constantly changing. Right. But do we think that is the fixed mindset is just a product kind of being a sports fan? So I don't know. It's interesting. The mindset in sports is something that I've wanted to write about, but have never gotten around to, because on the one hand, like especially for coaches or players, you kind of have to have that growth mindset, because otherwise it would just be a complete waste of time for you to do anything in practice. So like you talk to coaches and they're extremely optimistic about players' ability to improve their skills. At the other hand, though, sometimes that means, if they're underestimating how much that, maybe it's, Andre Drummond's hand size or whatever it is makes it difficult for him to be a free throw shooter no matter how much work he puts in, then like you get upset at the player for not improving, even though they tried and it just wasn't their fault. So I'm kind of fascinated by that. Like you almost end up blaming the player for not being good enough if you have too much of a growth mindset. Right. Interesting.
Hit them with the hashtag. Let's get out of here.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have today, but we'll be back on Tuesday where we'll be taking more of your questions. Be sure to share those with us at the hashtag KBKP.
Computer, execute 12.4p operation.
Optimizing algorithm. Running encryption packet alpha. Night. Oh, I don't feel so good.
What is it, computer?
Is it hot in here? It feels hot in here. I feel a little clammy. I should lie down or something.
A computer with a virus? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
Those oysters Rockefeller were a mistake.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.